Here's why Tyrion betrayed Daenerys in Season 8. When Game of Thrones reached its explosive final season, one of the most shocking turns wasn't a bloody battle or a dragon's fiery rampage. It was the quiet but devastating decision of Tyrion Lannister to betray the queen he had sworn to serve. Tyrion had spent years standing beside Daenerys Targaryen, counseling her through impossible choices, believing in her dream of a better world. Yet in the end, he gave Jon Snow the final push to kill the very woman he once called his queen. Why? What drove Tyrion to turn against Daenerys in the closing chapters of this epic saga? Was it strategy, fear, love for the people, or something far more complicated? Today, we're breaking down the real reasons Tyrion betrayed Daenerys in Season 8, examining every key scene, hidden motivation, and moral dilemma that led to his fateful choice. To understand Tyrion's betrayal, we need to go back to the foundation of his relationship with Daenerys. When Tyrion first aligned himself with her in Season 5, he was a man in exile, accused of murdering his father and fleeing Westeros with a price on his head. Daenerys, on the other hand, was a queen without a country, fighting to free the oppressed across the narrow sea. Tyrion saw in her something he had rarely seen in rulers, a genuine desire to break the wheel of tyranny. She wasn't simply chasing power for its own sake. She wanted to build a new world, one where cruelty and injustice would no longer reign. For a man who had spent his entire life watching powerful people abuse their positions, Daenerys represented hope, a chance to use his sharp mind and political experience to help someone who actually cared about justice. But from the very beginning, Tyrion's faith in Daenerys came with a measure of caution. He admired her compassion for the downtrodden, yet he was wary of her Targaryen blood and the temper that often flared when she faced resistance. Tyrion repeatedly urged restraint when Daenerys wanted to unleash her dragons on her enemies. He advised her to win Westeros with minimal bloodshed, to avoid becoming another tyrant like her father, the Mad King. This tension between Daenerys' fiery instincts and Tyrion's careful diplomacy became a defining feature of their partnership. Tyrion believed he could guide her away from the mistakes of the past, but guiding a dragon is no easy task. As Season 8 begins, Tyrion's doubts are already growing. His strategic failures, most notably underestimating Cersei's willingness to break promises, have left Daenerys frustrated and impatient. Their trust begins to fray. Tyrion urges caution while Daenerys demands action. He warns against rash attacks on King's Landing, but his plans to negotiate with Cersei repeatedly backfire. Each failure chips away at Daenerys' faith in him, and each act of cruelty by Cersei strengthens Daenerys' belief that only fire and blood can bring justice. Tyrion, once her most trusted advisor, finds himself sidelined as Daenerys leans more heavily on the strength of her armies and the loyalty of her dragons. The death of key allies accelerates Daenerys' descent. The brutal execution of Missandei by Cersei's forces is a turning point. Daenerys, closest friend and confidant, dies in chains, her final word, Dracarys, a call for fire and vengeance. Tyrion watches helplessly as Daenerys' grief hardens into fury. He pleads with her to show mercy, to avoid becoming the very tyrant she seeks to overthrow. But Daenerys is losing faith not only in Tyrion's counsel but in the idea of mercy itself. Every loss convinces her that fear, not love, is the only path to victory. Then comes the massacre of King's Landing, the moment when Tyrion's fears are realized. Despite the city's surrender, Daenerys chooses to burn it to the ground, unleashing Drogon's fire on soldiers and civilians alike. Tyrion witnesses the horror from the streets as innocent men, women, and children are incinerated. This is the nightmare he has been trying to prevent since he joined her. In that instant, the dream of a just queen dies in a storm of dragonfire. For Tyrion, Daenerys is no longer the breaker of chains. She is a conqueror who rules through terror, a reflection of the very tyrants she vowed to destroy. Tyrion's betrayal begins the moment the bells of King's Landing fall silent. He walks through the ruins, his face etched with despair. He searches desperately for survivors, for some sign that Daenerys' actions can be justified, but finds only ash and corpses. When he discovers the bodies of his siblings, Jaime and Cersei, buried beneath the rubble, the tragedy becomes personal. Despite their many betrayals, Tyrion loved his brother deeply. Jaime was his protector, the one person who saw him as more than a monster. Seeing Jaime and Cersei dead, victims of Daenerys' wrath, Tyrion's last thread of loyalty snaps. He realizes that Daenerys is not just a danger to her enemies, she is a danger to everyone. But Tyrion's decision is not purely emotional. It is also deeply political. As Hand of the Queen, Tyrion bears responsibility for every life lost in the conquest of King's Landing. He knows that history will remember this massacre as much as it remembers the Mad King's wildfire plots. His sense of duty, sharpened by years of serving rulers who abused power, tells him that he cannot stand by while Daenerys takes the Iron Throne. If she burned one city to win, what will stop her from burning another to keep it? Tyrion's fear is not just for Westeros but for the very idea of justice. Allowing Daenerys to rule would mean surrendering the realm to perpetual fear. Tyrion's conversations after the massacre reveal the depth of his internal conflict. When he confronts Daenerys, he throws down his hand's pin, symbolically rejecting her authority. "You slaughtered a city," he tells her, his voice trembling with both anger and heartbreak. Daenerys responds with cold logic, insisting that the deaths were necessary to free the world from tyrants. In her mind, every innocent burned in King's Landing is a step toward a utopia where no one will ever be oppressed again. Tyrion sees the trap in her reasoning. A ruler who believes her cause justifies any means will never stop killing. Her revolution will devour the very people it claims to protect. This realization sets the stage for Tyrion's final act of betrayal. Imprisoned by Daenerys for freeing Jaime, Tyrion uses his last moments of freedom to speak with Jon Snow. This conversation is the heart of his decision. Tyrion appeals to Jon's sense of honor, urging him to see that Daenerys will not stop with King's Landing. "Everywhere she goes, evil men die and we cheer her for it," Tyrion says. "And she grows more powerful and more sure that she is good and right." In those lines, Tyrion articulates the central tragedy of Daenerys' character. Her belief in her own righteousness makes her unstoppable and therefore dangerous. Tyrion knows that only Jon can stop her, and he gives Jon the moral argument he needs to act. Some might call this manipulation, but Tyrion's words are rooted in hard-earned wisdom. He has spent his entire life watching power corrupt. From his sadistic father Tywin to his cruel nephew Joffrey, Tyrion has seen what happens when rulers believe they are chosen by destiny. Daenerys may have started with noble intentions, but in Tyrion's eyes, she has become the greatest threat of all, a savior who believes her vision of the world is worth any price. His betrayal is not a betrayal of Daenerys' original dream, it is a desperate attempt to save that dream from becoming a nightmare. It's important to recognize that Tyrion's choice is not easy. He genuinely loves Daenerys, not romantically but as a leader and a friend. He once told her, "I believe in you and your dream of breaking the wheel." When he convinces Jon to kill her, he is effectively destroying the very cause that gave his life purpose. His tears in the finale are not just for the lives lost in King's Landing but for the hope he once placed in Daenerys. Betraying her means admitting that his faith was misplaced, that his careful guidance could not prevent the darkness he feared. Tyrion's betrayal is also an act of personal redemption. Throughout the series, he has wrestled with guilt over the suffering caused by his family, guilt over the lives lost in wars he helped plan, guilt over the unintended consequences of his strategies. By the time of Season 8, Tyrion's failures as Hand weigh heavily on him.